joined with our good friend. We've had him on the show before, Mr. Adam Kokesh. How are you doing, my man?
Well, I'm playing the only appropriate libertarian drinking game that you can play tonight, and because tonight, I don't know. I mean, if I think I won the game because I forgot why. There's some. Oh, that's right. It's Pussy Grabber and Kid Sniffer having their joint duopoly propaganda press conference, and I don't hate myself enough to watch it, so I'm playing the only appropriate libertarian drinking game you can play on a night like tonight, which is every time you hear something about the debate, you drink until you forget that there's a debate happening. And and except for take a drink, it's hit the bong. And I am so just blissfully unaware of Cheeto Jesus and sleepy creepy Joe Biden, whatever it is that they're doing tonight. I wish them well. I hope neither of them has an aneurysm and falls down on stage, but that's about the nicest. Wait, you know what? My mom said if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So I will say about Donald Trump. I really do like the natural skin tone of his eyelids, and of Joe Biden. I like the tactile nature of his leg hair. It's really quite something to behold, especially
it goes blonde in the sun. It's fun to pet. Corn Pop will tell you all about that. He knows all about Joe Biden's leg health. For those guys listening who don't know, Adam Kokesh ran for president. He wanted to be the nominee for the Libertarian Party. He wanted to be on that debate stage tonight instead of here talking to us. Well, we won't take it personally. So,
well, I mean, since you mentioned it like that, like anytime when I was now, I'm just sort of like, yeah, I'm stepping out from my role as that candidate, because to me, in the spirit of the movement and the party, let the spotlight be on Jo Jorgensen. We see a lot of candidates in the LP who run for the presidential nomination and then go, well, I didn't get the nomination for the party, I'm going to run as an independent. And it's like, well, then, I mean, not only are you never going to get the nomination in the future because you just proved that you're not a team player and that everything you said about, loyalty, at least and of course, we're all principle before party people, but there is a certain loyalty to organization and to people and to group efforts. And I am really excited that we have a nominee, Jo Jorgensen, this year, who I can be a lot more enthusiastic about than Governor Gary Johnson and Bill Weld, because she represents a principled message of libertarianism. And it doesn't look good right now. I'm not gonna lie. We just want to cover the spread. We want to be the spoilers. Like, yeah, a vote for Jorgensen is stealing a vote from so and so. Well, yeah, we didn't want so and so to win anyway. Fuck your candidate 2020. I would rather have someone like Jo Jorgensen and Spike Cohen representing the party than someone who doesn't get the ethical foundation of libertarianism. So I'm really grateful for that.
You're telling me that you weren't all down with Wild Bill Weld? I mean, that guy was a blast at parties. I don't know if you ever met him in person, but when that guy got up on stage to speak to you, you paid attention because he just brought so much energy to the room. I'm being facetious, of course. He wasn't any of those things, and we all know it. So, and real quick, though, I want to ask
before we move on, I have to make two very important points about two things you just raised. One, because I didn't finish what I was saying, and the thing about when I was introduced as a presidential candidate, I used to say, "Hold on, I'm not like any of these other psychopaths who are actually running to be president of the United States. My platform is fundamentally different. You give me the ring of power, I'm going to throw it directly into the fire. That's what you're supposed to do. I am not even accepting the title of president, but using that platform and the mechanism of the federal election to offer the American people a chance to dissolve the federal government entirely in a peaceful, orderly, responsible bankruptcy process that leaves us with 50 independent states, up to 562 sovereign native nations, the chance to take back what has been stolen from us and to end all rackets dependent on this central communist, fascist, socialist. And I'll explain. You want me to get into the?
Well,
You
not
look at
right
the 10
now.
manifesto, Mussolini's definition of fascism, any definition of socialism, those labels all fit both. And we don't have a two-party system in this country. We have a one-party system. And you are allowed to choose between red-flavored socialism or blue-flavored socialism. And I mean, I don't know. I don't have to tell you guys this, but what I would be, and I am honored and grateful that Jo Jorgensen is our nominee, representing what to me is at least a principled libertarian message. But I think the message itself and who we are as a movement and the time that we're at in human history calls for fundamental change. And to me, it looks like localization. You know, for like the Thoreau quote: "For every 1,000 striking at the branches of evil, there's one striking at the root." I think politically, addressing the idea of centralized government entirely is striking the root. And you know what? And I will say this little sidebar, but both anarchists and minarchists are wrong, and they're not real libertarians because both of them are engaging in a central planning fallacy, right? If you're a minarchist saying, I want government to do this, if you're an anarchist saying, I don't want government to exist, when the right answer from libertarianism is government can be as big or as small as you want, both in geography, population, and in role in society, as long as it's ethical, as long as it's voluntary. And that's why localization is so important to me as the way we make that transition. Instead of arguing over what should government be in its form, should government be ethical? Get it broken down all the way to the community level. Let communities decide for themselves and individuals whether they're going to have big government, small government, or no government at all. As long as they don't force it on me or anybody else, I want you to have the freedom to live that way. And that's what I think is a better fundamental application of libertarian principles. Now that I've said all that cool shit, let me say something that's going to make you hate me. Bill Weld's a good guy. And I know there are a lot of things as a libertarian to hate about Bill Weld, and I will take credit for being the guy that led the charge that ran him out of the party. Like, really, the 2020 nominating race was Kokesh Weld for like the first year of it, and it was not pleasant for him. But at the end of it, you know, I do believe he's done some shady political maneuvers. But at the end of the day, I believe he's an activist more than a politician. He was governor of Massachusetts for 2 terms. He could have gone super class asshole, you know, butt kisser, you know, let me touch the ring kind of guy, let me kiss it. But no, he was slumming around with the Libertarian Party. So, I mean, he's either a genius of a mole or, you know, a clumsy activist who makes himself look like a politician more than it serves him.
Hobbs, we haven't heard very much from you yet. What did you think that Jo Jorgensen had any chance of getting on that debate stage, and how do you think she might have done had she been there?
The chances of her getting on that debate stage this year, 0. I mean, we all knew that was going to happen, and we had that escort Joe to the debate stage. They can't stop all of us Facebook event that I think went even less far than the Storm Area 51 event did. And I think it would have been cool to see a bunch of, you know, fedora neck-bearded libertarians, you know, escorting Queen Joe to the debate stage. But I haven't watched any of the debates yet, and I want to save it for tomorrow because I just want to watch the whole 90-minute dumpster fire in one solid. But if it's as bad as everybody in my DMs, and I'm still getting DMs from people, hey, are you watching this right now? Yeah, if it's as bad as they're making it out to be, I have a feeling that she would just kind of be sitting in the middle like, okay. It's just like watching these grumpy old bastards yammer at each other, and Chris Wallace is like, people are telling me in my DMs, they're just like, yeah, man, Chris Wallace is like, I feel sorry for the guy, and the only thing I can think is I feel sorry for America.
Well, this is why in these debates the candidates should wear shock collars, and the moderators have the right to shock them anytime they wish. And every time they do, the next shock gets more painful. I think I would watch all 90 minutes of that, staring at the TV like, what's he gonna do next? Who's gonna get shocked next? That would be absolutely hilarious. And that is the only way that these debates would be valuable in any way, shape, or form. Because they haven't talked policy at all tonight. They haven't been talking actual issues, right? It's a bunch of Donald Trump staring at Joe Biden and Joe Biden doing his best not to look back at Donald Trump. That's what it is all night long. It's just Biden kind of glancing over at Trump and like, oh, shit, he's looking at me. I'm going to look over there.
Is he still there? Is he still there?
Like, oh, God damn it. Who let this homeless man into this debate? That's essentially what's going on. It's nuts. It's probably for the best that Jorgensen isn't there, because I can only imagine her being stuck in between these yammering old men trying to talk actual policy and never getting the chance to do it because, one, they just want to yell at each other, and two, she's probably not going to get any questions anyway because they're all going to try their best to just pretend she's not there in the first place.
Yeah, well, nobody's watching this to hear any policy points. That's the thing, having somebody like Joe who's actually got like solid policy ideas would be like somebody out in the middle of the ring trying to explain the Marquis de Queensberry boxing rules in the middle of a WWE match. You're not there at the WWE match to watch like rules and perfect form and everything. You're there to be entertained, and that's what this debate is. It's entertainment, pure and simple.
Well, it's deeper than that. It's validation.
Yes. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But we had some other things that we were going to talk about tonight. So kick us off from the top of the list, Nathan.
Okay, so we were going to start this night off talking about Breonna Taylor. And the verdict came out this week that they were not going to charge any of the police officers involved in her death with anything. Only one officer is being charged for anything involving the incident. Yeah, he shot at a wall. He shot a wall that he wasn't supposed to shoot at, and that was the big no-no. And so he's being charged for that. So let's go over it a bit, because we talked about this case way back when it first broke that this had happened. Breonna Taylor was living with her boyfriend in an apartment complex. Some police officers were after her ex-boyfriend for drug charges, and they suspected that he was using her apartment to transport drugs. So they got a warrant for a no-knock raid on her apartment. At some point between getting that warrant and conducting the raid, they decided that she was a soft target and they would announce themselves instead of just busting in the door, at least according to the AG who presided over the grand jury trial. And there's a lot of conflicting information coming out about this. One witness claimed that the officers announced themselves. The officers themselves say that they announced themselves. But this is a very large apartment complex. Nobody else heard the officers announce themselves. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend said that he didn't hear anyone announce themselves. All he knew is that there were people pounding on his door at 1 a.m. They were there at 1 a.m. And then they used a battering ram to knock down the door, at which point he shot at the intruders in self-defense, and they opened fire, which ultimately led to her death. And like I said, we talked about this back in the day. So this is an egregious use of police force. This never should have been here in the first place. Because first of all, we're libertarians, right? We believe that the war on drugs is evil. It should be ended. There's no justification for it. And that seems to be the primary cause of this tragedy. If the war on drugs didn't exist, Breonna Taylor would still be alive today.
Yep.
But another thing to consider is they decided that she was a soft target, which means they didn't think she was dangerous. They didn't think she was a flight risk. They didn't think she would fight back. They decided that a no-knock raid was unnecessary. And yet they went ahead and raided her apartment at 1 a.m. anyway. This brings up a whole load of questions like, why did you go at 1 a.m.? Why didn't you, I don't know, issue this warrant in the morning or in the afternoon at some point in time where it'd be a lot less threatening to hear someone knocking on your door? Why didn't you wait till she left the apartment and arrested her on her way to the car? All sorts of things you can do to avoid a violent confrontation with an individual that they apparently just didn't think to do. And that led to her tragic death. And the law, as terrible as it is on the side of these police officers. As terrible as that is to say, yeah, the law's on their side. The law says that they did nothing wrong. And that's why they're not being charged. And that's the real fucked up thing about all this. Because the law that is supposed to deliver us justice is providing us the exact opposite. It is saying to us that this tragic death of this woman was justified and that the police officers and the judge and everybody involved in this death bear no responsibility for it. And that's a tragedy. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few huge points that come out of this that have to be underscored. And one is that this sets a very dangerous precedent about responsibility. And the rules for me are not the rules for thee kind of setup here, where basically what they've said is if you're defending yourself, because or at least if you're a cop defending yourself, then you're not responsible for any damage that you cause, even not directly necessary to stopping the person you're defending yourself from. But they weren't defending themselves. They were the aggressors in invading the home. But this precedent, leads me to believe, hey, well, if you really want accountability for these cops, just someone who's armed get punched in the face while those cops are standing behind the guy who punches you in the face, and then you accidentally miss the guy who punched you because he's your buddy, and you shoot the cops, and then hey, now and you're not responsible because you were defending yourself. And you go, no. I mean, I hope I don't have to deconstruct how wrong that is. Just, in principle, if that's what they're trying to establish, yeah, the right to self-defense does not mean the right to kill other people without taking responsibility for it while you're defending yourself or in the moment. And the idea of no-knock raids, I was the victim of an effective no-knock raid. And it was knock, knock, knock. This is the police. Open up. 1, 2, battering ram. And there's aside from the problem with the drug war and victimless crimes, if you had private security, or if you had a system where individuals were liable for damages that they cause, if you had even just those market forces to bear, and you even for the police staters out there who think that humanity's evil and all this enforcement is necessary, you still have to allow the market to provide its magic in creating a balance between what techniques do you use to apprehend somebody. In terms of, if you had to pay the value or actually take responsibility for someone's life if you killed them, or property damage if you damage their property, and instead of no-knock raids and battering rams, you might be more inclined to polite conversations, or perhaps surrounding their vehicle and waiting them out, or non-lethal means of taking someone out. And, I hate to make this about Trump, but Brad Parscale, his former manager, I saw the video of him getting tackled in his domestic dispute arrest today. And the guy's calmly talking to cops, and they yell at him, get on the ground, and within 2 seconds they tackle him onto the street wearing no shirt. And I mean, it's not nearly, this is an important difference. If you're black or in a poor neighborhood, they come in with a battering ram and guns blazing, like they did for me. But if you're rich and white, or it's more about if you're rich than what color you are, but that's a big part of it too. Then at least they don't come in guns blazing like in Pascal's case. The more disturbing part of this to me is the indicator of how little progress has actually been made in police accountability. You would like with Chauvin and George Floyd in Minneapolis, they brought charges right away. They were weak charges, but they were like serious charges. It was, I think it was something like involuntary manslaughter, but it was like, yeah,
it was second degree murder in one case.
It was third.
It was third degree murder.
But it was serious, and a lot of that's been negotiated down and out, and charges dropped, and like it's still fucked up. But in this case, where they're just like, nah, we're not even going to pretend to hold these guys accountable. You're like, oh, fuck, really?
Mm.
And that's the thing about it. Oh, go ahead, Hobbs. You haven't had a chance to weigh in on this case.
So there's a few things that I'd like to dissect about. The first one is that the Breonna Taylor case was nowhere near the BLM Antifa radar until people that we pal around with, the Liberty Movement, the Boogaloo Boys, all those were the ones that really put a lot of pressure on, because we know a few guys that are actually living in and around Louisville that made a big deal about it, and then it kind of snowballed into the thing that it is right now. So it goes back to what we said a couple of weeks ago about how they're ignoring cases like this that are obvious police brutality while at the same time lionizing scumbags, and I don't know what that's all about. The next thing.
Hold on, I'll tell you why, and I don't think it's hard to figure out. There's a lot. Anything of this level of political significance has infiltrators on both sides.
Yeah,
they're very fine infiltrators on both sides.
Very fine people.
On both sides, yeah. But yes, and then the next thing is that it is being made into a racial thing. Like everything is being made into a racial thing these days, because cop involved killing of a black person when this is a drug war thing. If it, that's just how I see it. I don't think that they're like, oh, she's black, let's go get her with the no knock rate. I think it was more like, oh, it's drugs, let's go get her with a no knock rate.
Well, we saw something similar happen a couple of weeks ago to Warren Whitaker over in Arizona, where cops knocked on his door in the middle of the night. They announced themselves, but they didn't. See, here's the thing. People make a big deal about cops announcing themselves. And I did 5 years Air Force Security Forces, and I've had police training. So I know what I'm talking about when I say this. When you're supposed to use a command voice, you're supposed to speak very loudly and very clearly to make sure that people hear you and understand your words. Right? You're not supposed to say, police, this is the police. We're here. Open up the door. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be very loud, very commanding, and very articulate so people can understand what you're saying. In the case of Warren Whitaker, we have that case on video, unlike the Breonna Taylor case, right? Where they knocked on the door, said police. He was inside playing video games with the girlfriend, didn't hear, comes to the door with the gun because he doesn't know who these people are, and they immediately domed him in the back of the head. Right, in the Breonna Taylor case, the cops there weren't wearing body cams. This is simple stuff. Why aren't these cops wearing body cams? Cops all over this country should be wearing them. Not only so that we know what happened.
If you had market forces on there, it would be unconscionable to send someone out into the world with part of their job being to apply deadly force and not having a video camera on them rolling at all times, uploading to the cloud. That's insane.
And for their own good too. For their own good. Because say they are justified. Say if you could see the video, you would know, oh yeah, that was a justified shoot. Then we would know. There wouldn't be any of this speculation about it. So yes, wear the damn body cams. Go ahead.
Right, you're right with the body cam thing. It hurts nothing and it protects everybody, the cops and the suspects. But the other thing that I'd like to really kind of dig into is we have been hearing about and talking about this case for weeks, maybe a couple months now. Is it? I don't remember exactly how much time has passed, but all of this time that we've been hearing about this case, right up until they announced the decision, what were we told? No knock raid in the middle of the night. They busted down the door, received fire, fired back, killed a woman. Now, all of this new information is coming out saying, oh, they did announce themselves. Oh, they had the option for a no knock raid, but they chose not to use it. Only one guy entered the apartment. Only the guy in the apartment is the one that shot her. The guy that got charged with wanton endangerment was actually outside of the apartment and succumbed to sympathetic fire, where he heard shots and he just started pulling the trigger. So now we're getting all of this information that would have possibly defused a lot of the rioting and violence. Why are we only hearing about this right now? Why was these, and I understand that there's a lot of things that can't be released on a case that is still under investigation and everything. That's fine. But if you can come out and say, hey, it wasn't a no-knock raid, they did announce themselves, only one person went inside of the apartment, that, you know, laid it all out. A lot of the violence and a lot of the riots and a lot of the NFAC coalition, those wackadoodles out there that are marching in the streets of Louisville threatening to burn the whole fucking city to the ground, a lot of that could have been diffused if we had had this information. But instead, either the department didn't release it or they did release it and the news didn't report it, which really makes me wonder some stuff. Things. I don't want to get my Alex Jones hat on, but conspiracy theory.
Well, no, this is where Occam's razor applies. Cops fucking lie, kind of all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they say they have the neighbor is the one who is corroborating witness that the fact that they did announce themselves. So either they paid this guy off or they did announce themselves. And again, I have to wonder if the media is taking that old axiom of if it bleeds, it leads, and running all the way to the finish line with it and be like, you know what? Riots are good for business. Let's just pump them up. Violence, destruction, anything negative that we can report on, get people chomping at each other's bits and just fuck the whole thing and burn it down.
Well, that's the thing about it. Even if they did announce themselves, and they could have, even if they did, they obviously didn't do it loud enough and articulate enough to be heard inside the apartment, right? And this is an apartment building. Who here has lived inside an apartment buildings? The walls are paper thin in apartment buildings. Someone in the hallway yelling and screaming and saying, "This is the police! Open up the door!" That's going to be heard by more than one person. And apparently, that's not the case. Only one neighbor corroborates the police testimony that they announced themselves. Okay, so even if they did, like in the case of Ryan Whitaker, they announced themselves there. We have it on video, but they didn't do it loud enough for the people inside the building to hear them and understand that it's the police at the door. So it isn't an either or. They may have very well announced themselves, but it's not just enough to say you're the police. You have to say it loudly and clearly so the people inside can hear you. That's the whole point of announcing yourself, so the people inside don't think they're being robbed. And that's another thing about this case. Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend was a violent drug dealer, and they were afraid of him and afraid that he might try to do something because he didn't want Breonna to be seeing other people. So it is very possible that they thought, hey, this could be her ex-boyfriend, this violent drug dealer. Let me get my gun to defend ourselves. And then when the door flies off its hinges, they're like, oh shit, the fucking drug kingpins are coming to our apartment. We have to protect ourselves. Pew, pew, fight back. Like any one of us would have done. Right? Like any one of these Republican conservative dudes who are always fucking having a hard on about defending their homes with their guns. Like, oh, if people come to my house and take my guns, I'm going to fight back. Dudes, that's exactly what happened here. The state came and issued a warrant, broke down the door, and someone defended their home and got killed in the process. That's exactly what happened here. And yet you fucking bootlickers want to suck up these cops and say, oh, they did nothing wrong. How can you say they didn't anything wrong? Like, dude, fuck you. What the fuck is the matter with you?
Yeah, well, when you say it like that, you go, "What's wrong with these people?" And it does reveal an element of racism when you see how people interpret a case like this, oftentimes, and it is pretty sad.
Yeah. And you're right. In the middle of the night, even if they had announced themselves, knock on the door, it's the police, and then immediately
1 a.m. It's 1 a.m. They're fucking sleeping.
It's 1 a.m. They're asleep. It's dark, and hate to break it to anybody out there, but anybody can yell. It's the police. Your badge doesn't like unlock some special vocal cord ability. It's like I can go knock on my neighbor's door and say it's the police. If he doesn't open the door and I kick the door down, he's gonna be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, officer." I'm like, I'm not the police. Now give me your shit.
This at home, kids.
Yeah, don't try for legal reasons. That's a joke. Yeah, but yeah. So but here's the thing that I would like to know is these cops, whether they got charged, whether they didn't get charged, okay, fine. For all they knew, they were conducting a lawful, legal, and in their eyes, probably moral warrant. They got shot at. One of them shot back. Shit happens. Terrible shit. Bad shit happens. I want to know who signed off on this warrant. Because apparently there was no drugs in the apartment, no evidence that there was drugs in the apartment, no evidence of all that what they claimed on the warrant had ever taken place at that apartment. And get this, the guy that they were after was in custody across town. The ex-boyfriend was already in custody when this raid took place. So I want to know, not defending the cops or anything like that, but I want to know who above them is the ones that said, "Hey, go bust down that door, find some drugs, find this guy that we have locked up in the cell across town." Those are the people that should be standing tall in front of the man, not these three cops.
So this was something that came up a lot with Iraq Veterans Against the War in terms of the attitude towards the troops. Is it them or the policymakers? And I think in this case, where you point out the people who signed the warrant and gave the orders for this, but there's a certain design to this policy that, like I said, denies the application of market forces, which would say de-escalate. If there's someone there, where he is, you don't take do you risk killing somebody, or do you risk waking up an entire apartment building and putting a few extra cops to surround the thing? And then you go in and you de-escalate and you guarantee there's not going to be, a situation with this, with an accidental death like this. And I think your point is really well taken. That there is a certain culpability that we had as troops signing up when you enlist and say, "I'm going to kill for politicians," and you don't bother to figure out what that means. There's at least a gross negligence there. But when you're lied to about what that means, and you're lied into supporting a war that's unjustifiable by any concept of ethics, then you go, well, someone else bears the primary responsibility here. And in the case of the Breonna Taylor shooting, you go, well, the institution of the drug war, the institution of the police as we know it, the practices that result from that of no-knock raids, and all the individuals in carrying this case out. And in that case, you get down to the individual officers involved, and you go, well, yeah, they should have known better, but they're not the only architects of this. They're not the only ones responsible for this, and they're certainly lied to a lot. And I know that when I was in the Marines, actually when I was in Fallujah, we first had Fox News in the chow halls, and that was too fair and balanced for the military. They had to replace it with the Armed Forces Network, all propaganda all the time. And the armed forces of the U.S. are, distinctly, possibly the most propagandized population on the planet. Cops,
and one of the most isolated too.
In some ways, yeah. But cops, less isolated, but more propagandized on a daily basis with briefings. Be afraid every time you go out on the street. Be afraid of these people. Be afraid of these people. Be afraid of these people. And by the way, you can do whatever you need to defend yourself.
Yep.
See, I remember I was never stationed in the United States when I was in the Air Force. I was always overseas. I was stationed in South Korea and in the United Kingdom. And yeah, when you're in the military, you are kind of isolated away from the general population, especially when you're of lower ranks. If you're, a junior enlisted person, you live in dorms, you live behind barbed wire fences, right? You work and live on the base, and sometimes you go out very rarely. So yeah, if you're a lot of people in the military are very isolated from the general population, and it goes more so because you're not stationed where you grew up, right? If you join the police force, you grew up, you live in the same city. Like you join your local city's police force. You don't join the police in New York and then they send you off to Phoenix. You're in the military, you join, they send you wherever the fuck they want, and then they make you live within this little tight box behind barbed wire in a dorm room where the only other people you interact with are other military members. So in the military, you're one of the most isolated populations in the country. But I want to get back to the Breonna Taylor case because, as is very predictable, following this ruling, Louisville turned into a fucking war zone, just like all these other cities that we've seen around the country. When something like this happens, happened in Minneapolis, happened in Kenosha, it's been happening in Seattle and Portland nonstop for God knows how long now. It just hasn't stopped there. Just riots and violence, and the same sad story that we've been seeing for months now, the wanton destruction of innocent people's private businesses, private property, assaults on the large scale, just sad stories all around. And we've talked about this on the show before, and it frustrates me sometimes. There's a lot of people who want to make this story about one or the other, and they want to disparage people who want to talk about both, right? It's either talk about police violence and only police violence, or talk about the riots and only the riots. And then when you want to talk about both, you're labeled by both sides as like, oh, well, you don't really care about the real issue. I'm like, no. That's not it at all. See, we're libertarians. We care in general when innocent people have their rights and liberties violated. We care about that shit. That's our thing, right? When people have their rights violated and trampled upon, we take issue with that. And we don't care if it's the government or another person doing it. Like, yeah, cops killing someone is terrible. It's also terrible, a private citizen killing another private citizen. That's also terrible. Those are both horrible, horrible things. And the one does not justify the other. And there's no reason why we have to pretend that it does. There's no reason why we have to pretend that the death of Breonna Taylor justifies you going out and punching some random person for no reason. It doesn't justify it. There's no reason for it. And it doesn't even help. It's not helpful in the least bit. And I have a sneaky suspicion that a lot of people out there who are downplaying violence, who are downplaying people having their livelihoods destroyed, probably haven't lost anything in these riots themselves and would likely feel different if it was their business, their home, their property that was being destroyed. But of course, we'll never know because a lot of these people don't have any property to be destroyed, and we probably don't have to worry about any of that shit anyway.
Yeah, this is something that goes back to when we were, talking about even as far as back as that, what was his name, Ahmaud Arbery case, where people were like, it's either this guy is a racist piece of shit who was hunting down a black guy because he wanted to hunt down a black guy, or this guy was casing the joint and he got what he deserved. And I'm just like, both can be true. They're not mutually exclusive. You could just have two shitty people meeting up and bad things happening, and it's the same thing with the riots and the police violence. Both can be true.
I don't know where it was on the screen for where I'm pointing, but somewhere on the screen there was a comment from our friend Mercedes.
Yep.
I'm late because that fucking debate was insane. Yeah, exactly. I'm glad I didn't watch it. I really don't think I ever. I mean, I could be convinced if I read, but I'm going to read a write up and watch some highlights at most. So welcome, Mercedes.
And what was your take when you? Because we've been seeing these riots and this violence go on in this country for months now. What has been your take on this? A lot of people try to justify it or try to downplay it. We haven't been about that, but what has been your take on all that?
Well, anybody who's complaining about the property destruction as a major problem right now, and I'm not saying it's not real, but if you're not also doing that with a view that puts it on the scale of what Black Americans have experienced, it is really kind of ignoring the bigger humane issue here. And I will defend them in a sense that, yeah, destroying, there's no reason that any of this justifies violence against another person or to steal someone's property. But when you're talking about, Black Americans who don't own anything, who have been systemically and consistently and violently oppressed for generations in the United States, I don't really care if they go and steal shit from Target. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, destruction of property, it's stupid, but at some point when you're being killed, if you have to destroy property to make a point, I'm going to say that's on such a lower scale that it almost doesn't count. But big but here, the distortion of what is a legitimate expression of anger around the Black Lives Matter movement, not the organization, is being hugely distorted, infiltrated, and blown up and twisted to be more violent by interests contrary to its best interest. And I think, in particular, the Trump campaign benefits right now from this being leftist-driven chaos for which the law and order candidate is the only answer. And there were bricks in pallets placed around where a lot of these protests were going to be. We saw evidence of that. There's some controversy whether it's decisive proof of a pattern. I don't particularly care to get into, could it be just a coincidence? It could be. But it's enough of a pattern that you go, something's up here. And you don't even have to, project into things like that to go, well, look at how the media is blowing this up. What protests get people out there, get people angry. Obviously, the media is fueling this in a lot of ways. But also, when I saw what happened in Kenosha, and I saw that this had taken a darker turn to masked Antifa activists being more relevant in the property destruction than anything at all that looked like Black Lives Matter. And it's white kids. I mean, you can see the wrists, from the gloves to the sleeves and the necks behind the mask. It's white kids, and I think a lot of them are cops. I think a lot of them are paid agents. I think the police in California were lying when they said that the fires weren't being deliberately set for political reasons. There were multiple individuals arrested for arson behind some of the major fires in California and Oregon. The police directly lied about that in trying to deny that it might be politically motivated. And you'd have to think that the people protesting like in Oregon are dumb, but they're not idiots. If they're just trying to cause chaos and they didn't go, oh yeah, there's big mismanaged forests around here, and with a Molotov cocktail, I can start a forest fire and cause way more damage, and I'm just trying to be a dick. So like, why not be a bigger dick? And like it's insane to say that cops could say decisively that's not possible, and to see them lie about that, you go, okay, something else is there. And just back to Kenosha, there was the widespread destruction of cars in auto lots and at dealerships, and you go, there's no real. And I mean, it'd be one thing if they were like going to Beverly Hills or some posh neighborhood in New York where it was all really bankers and stuff. But this is Kenosha, Wisconsin. We're not talking about like Ferrari dealerships. They're not. That's not what they're doing. And I don't know if you noticed, but I think it's called Operation Crystal Shield from the DEA. They just arrested over 400 traffickers for methamphetamines at over a dozen hub cities in the United States. And I predicted this years ago when I saw cannabis becoming as legal as it was in the United States, leading to more local production, people growing weed. I don't know if you guys smoke pot, but nobody smokes trash compactor weed from Mexico anymore. That's just like not. I don't know if high school kids are still doing that somewhere, and I don't think so. I hope not. Please don't, kids. Don't smoke bad. Life is too short to smoke shitty weed like the trash compactor, pesticide, who knows, laden with what shit that was coming in from Mexico when I was in high school. But I predicted that the cartels were then going to be competing over reduced markets in cocaine and heroin and meth. And I think that right now, in particular, and I know how cheap it is to get meth even where I live, it's not homegrown people cooking in their kitchens. It's not even Breaking Bad cooking out of an RV in the desert. It's coming in through Mexico in massive, massive quantities. And the DEA is just busted 400 plus people for trafficking charges. And you don't get to do that without permission. You don't get to import drugs like that without permission from the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI. Any of those three agencies could have stopped the large-scale meth traffic coming in from Mexico. And they haven't. They let it happen. They let people get arrested. It's part of the game, cat and mouse. What does this remind you of? I hope you can put this together and go, oh, yeah, Freeway Ricky Ross, crack cocaine epidemic, inner city LA in the 80s.
Yeah, the CIA has definitely been involved in the drug trade for a very long time. So that wouldn't surprise me at all to hear.
Sidebar that too much. But I think I just want to point out that so much of this from the ground up is contrived and manipulated. And I think meth is driving a lot of these protests as well. You see the crazy white kids as Antifa going out with baseball bats, busting in car windows. They're on some kind of drugs.
No, I think the drug they're high on is just self-righteousness. Self-righteousness is a hell of a drug. When you think that you're the moral human being and what you do is ultimately justified in some cosmic sense, you can do anything. You can do anything when you have that belief.
That doesn't explain it. No, I mean, that's part of it. But even then, give that guy, if you disagree with that person's political positions, give him meth and watch him embarrass himself. Like.
Well, they're definitely not. They're definitely not smoking weed, because I've never seen a guy act like a crazy violent motherfucker when he's high on weed. It's definitely something else that he's high on. All right, so let's move forward to another subject. So Donald Trump has nominated a new Supreme Court justice to take the place of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Amy Coney Barrett, that's her name. Just blanked on her name for some reason. Amy Coney Barrett has been nominated to take her place, and see, we've already been hearing the freak out from leftists for the last couple of weeks, ever since the notorious RBJ passed away. And now they have a new target for hatred. It's kind of funny this time around, because Trump nominated a woman, so I don't think we're going to hear the rape accusations that they pulled out of their house.
Just you wait.
Maybe we will.
Did I tell you she raped me back in college? I haven't run that by my lawyer. I'm not supposed to talk about that yet.
Roast Liberty exclusive.
You're going to see me on Capitol Hill in a couple of weeks, guys.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Get Nancy Pelosi on the phone. Amy Coney Barrett, while she was at Notre Dame, put on a strap-on and sexually assaulted Adam Kokesh. I'm very sorry for your experience.
No. There's no strap-on involved. It was actually a rather pleasant experience, but still entirely inappropriate.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I would complain. She's kind of cougary.
She kind of is. This would have been back in her college days. So, probably even.
Oh yeah, no, she was hot when she raped me for sure.
This is back before she had 5 kids.
But her kids seem to be the target of most of their attacks now, and they're not anything about her record. They're not anything about anything that she's done legally. The attacks against her that are coming now are these completely crazy, typical blue check mark on Twitter social justice, like she adopted 2 kids from Haiti. Now, in any other situation, that would be fantastic. Haiti is a shithole, and any person who would get 2 kids out of there and into the United States where they can have a wonderful and privileged life in the basically lap of luxury is fantastic. But no. Apparently, this woman adopting 2 Haitian kids is like colonizing children or something, or I don't know. It's insane.
Oh my God! I was wondering where the line of attack would come from. I mean, if it were a man, it would be 30-year-old accusations of sexual assault, but it's not a man. And see, here's the thing about her. I have no idea about her rulings because no one's talking about them. And, I don't have the time to go back through old court records and read all her opinions on various cases. Right? This is the deficiency of the Road to Liberty podcast. Spoiler alert here, people. We rely on other news sites to report on this kind of stuff. I'm not going to read her old opinions, guys. I don't have time for that. But no, I don't get to hear any of this because guess what? No one's talking about her actual record. No one's talking about her legal opinions. None of that seems to be relevant. It's all Democrats being pissy because they miss out on another Supreme Court justice, right? It's all sour grapes from Democrats, and then hardcore lefties are making up stupid-ass reasons to hate this woman. It's like it had nothing to do with her record or her opinions. It has to do with the fact that she's a Catholic, and she's part of a group that has some weird names in it. Oh, the what is it called? The People of Praise? Like, oh no, the People of Praise, a church group where people get together and give each other advice on life issues. Ooh, boogie boogie. How terrible of them. Oh, she adopted 2 Haitian children. She's doing it to use them as symbols. Right? Some adopted parents abuse their children. Maybe she's abusing her children. Or maybe, how about this? This successful, accomplished woman is really just the puppet of her husband. He's holding her under his boot.
It's the handmaid's tale, except the handmaid gets to sit on the highest court in the land.
Yeah, I was just thinking when we were saying all those totally inappropriate things about this woman earlier, it's an interesting trade-off I've never really appreciated, but if you're a woman, you're going to get objectified. Like, there's something biologically programmed into every human being to judge men more by their ability to manipulate or acquire resources, and women by their ability to bear children, right? And there's an interesting trade-off here. Women are going to be objectified, but you'll never get accused of rape. Like, I think that's a pretty good deal. Like, I would take that deal. If as a man, I could stay a man, and you would objectify me and make fun of my nose and my small penis and things like that. Like, I'd be like, yeah, okay, but I'll never be accused of rape. Don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah, when we used to do our sexual harassment training in the Army, I would always raise my hand, and the sharp EO person would be like, "What do you want, Sergeant Hobbs?" And I'd be like, "I would like to say that the lack of sexual harassment coming my way is really hurting my self-esteem," and that never went over very well.
I have a funny memory of just a moment like that in college. when we had our freshman orientation and sexual harassment. And I mean, overall, I'm glad. I think the society is becoming more conscious of these issues and more sensitive and more respectful of self-ownership in a lot of sexual ways. That's a great thing. We can still laugh at how we fuck it up and go like overboard on something. But in this, and you gotta have a sense of humor about everything anyway, especially sex. It's fucking ridiculous. But when they asked us, how can you make sure that a woman is consenting? The best answer was, make her take top.
No, don't you? You're supposed to ask every 2 minutes to make sure it's still consensual. That's like the actual right answer, which is kind of ridiculous.
Well, no, I mean, I'm old. I went to college. My freshman year of college was 2001. Was it 2000? Class of 2000, graduating high school. No, because I deferred for a year. So like 2001, yeah. It wasn't as bad back then. And I went to Claremont and McKenna College. I don't get to talk about this very often. At the 5-college consortium in Claremont. And it's still, a liberal arts college, but it's notoriously conservative and has a very strong government department. They're reverse snobs. They don't call it political science. They call it the government department. And, even as conservative as it was, I mean, that was still, conservative as a flavor of socialism. And there was a significant amount of politically correct bullshit that we had to put up with.
All right, so let's get into the last topic that we wanted to go over, and we're going to skip over the Trump tax stuff because taxation is theft. Fuck that anyway. So we're going to skip right into.
Well, it is worth pointing out. I'm sorry to interrupt, but like I have been covering the story over the last few days, and I think I have a big "I told you so" in this one, but a lot of us as libertarians do as well. Because when you looked at someone like Donald Trump, and you with any eye to being critical of his credibility, you go, this guy's a fucking phony. Like 6 bankrupt businesses, not showing tax records. Like there's and now it's like he's being financially pantsed. It's kind of fun to watch. Like I'm not going to gloat over it like a Biden supporter and go, hee, Donald Trump is a con man. It's like, I've been telling you this for years. Like I said in 2016, because someone told me off the record, and it's funny. They said he's not really worth $10 billion. He's not even worth $1 billion. He's probably worth a few $100 million. And it's like, that's something to sneeze at. But when you're worth a few $100 million and you tell the American people it's $10 billion, that's a big fucking fraud. And it turns out that his net worth might actually be negative if you don't count his brand, which he'd tell you by itself is now worth $10 billion because he's president. He conned his way into this.
There is.
Yeah, no, he is.
Bullshit for a living.
Yeah, I mean, I can respect him and respect that he's fucking fundamentally dishonest and evil, and to see that like exposed, I think that's a good thing. I want to raise this not just to say all that, but for the system as a whole to lose one big chunk of credibility. I'm like, yeah, watch the mainstream. Oh yeah, this guy, just another con man too, just another fraud. And the way I used to say it was, Donald Trump can't be bought. You're right. He's been in the pockets of the bankers his entire life. Like literally his entire life, he's been in the pockets of the bankers. It's hilarious to see Democrats saying his debt represents a liability. Who does he owe the money to? Banks. No shit. Every president serves the banks first and foremost. He's going to keep serving the banks. Damn right, it's a fucking liability.
And if he doesn't serve the banks, he's going to catch a bullet JFK style. It's
funny to see Democrats talk about debt being a liability when they have nothing at all to say about the national debt. Like, oh, the debt's a liability. Well, the fuck are you talking about? What are we, $8 trillion in debt right now? More? Fuck, I don't know. Nobody knows anymore. It's just going up infinitely forever, and no one gives a shit. But Donald Trump, he's in debt. Like, yeah.
Can I go? I want to go back to one thing that I said earlier to back up what I said. Like Donald Trump is a socialist. Donald Trump is a communist, and Donald Trump is a fascist. All of those words, by their just direct definitions, apply. Socialism, an economic system based on communal means of the ownership of the means of production. We have socialized retirement. We even call it social security. Socialized infrastructure, socialized safety with police, socialized dispute resolution with courts and legal. We have, I mean, just the things that are important, like defense, the military. The founders were against this. We have socialism is, and this isn't even getting into Medicare and Medicaid and all the welfare and all the regulatory, everything the government has a hand in. But basically, everything the government has a hand in, and it means that communalizes ownership of the means of producing any general social good is a form of socialism. We have a largely socialist economy in this country and a very socialist government. I should say an aggressively socialist government. Donald Trump is the head of this system, and he's not fighting it. Government is growing under him. Communism, 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. You can Google this shit if you don't believe me. We have we have all of them, all 10 of them, at least partially in effect, and the majority of them entirely in effect in the United States by the federal government. We have a primarily more than an if zero to communism is 0 planks of the Communist Manifesto to 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, we have more communism than not communism left in this country. Now you might say, but Adam, we have a lot of free market forces. Okay, so if I gave you a sandwich and I replaced the majority of the meat with shit, would you say, well, there's still some meat in here, it's still a sandwich? You say, fuck you for trying to feed me a shit sandwich, Adam, you sick bastard. Why? How dare you call this a sandwich? Why are you trying to feed me this crap? You'd say, oh yeah, fuck that. Now, fascism. And I will say that America has held true to at least one pretend ideal of being anti-racist. There's not a fundamentally racist element, although there is in a lot of subliminal ways to modern American outward nationalism. But Mussolini defined fascism as the merging of corporations and the state. Donald Trump said early on in Corona, oh, don't worry, a lot of the restaurants are going to close, but don't worry, they'll come back with new ownership. We'll buy out companies that are failing in major chunks of stocks. If you don't think corporatism is the dominant system of economics in America, you're not fucking paying attention. I mean, you want to call it banksterism instead of corporatism? Fine, I'm not going to split hairs, but it's corporatism. Mussolini himself said fascism should best be described as corporatism. So you tell someone this, you go, I don't know, I can't really support Donald Trump because I'm against socialism. What do you mean? Watch the magatards' heads explode when they go, oh yeah, I guess my feels and how Donald Trump makes me feel like less of a pussy aren't really that relevant when all I'm doing by supporting him is supporting America going further down this socialist, communist, fascist road to hell that we're on.
They just want to feel superior to Democrats is what it is. And Donald Trump gives them those good feelings inside. That's what it's all about.
You gotta own the libs.
But Donald Trump is the biggest trick that the Democrats ever pulled on Republicans in the first place. He is a former Democrat who palled around with the Clintons and Epstein and Maxwell from New York City, and then he became the standard bearer for the Republican Party. Are you kidding me? Like, holy shit, what a good scam artist Donald Trump is. I gotta give it to Cadet Bone Spurs. Holy shit. He knows how to sell some bullshit.
Well, I mean, every presidential candidate is world class in selling bullshit, but Donald Trump especially. This guy has made a living doing nothing but selling bullshit his entire life. Oh, yeah. And he's doing more of it. And I mean, we're going to have to just wait and see how this presidential election turns out, because I don't think none of us are voting for either of these old authoritarians who had just spent the last hour and a half inarticulately yelling at each other. So that was a lot of fun. We got to miss out on it. For those guys who are watching the live stream, I have up on the screen a whole bunch of our merchandise that we have for sale. You can see that at roads2liberty.com. Go to roads2liberty.com. Got a bunch of shirts, got a coffee mug. That's my personal favorite, the coffee mug. Always need some of those. Yes, I see Adam has some coffee mugs that he probably has for sale as well. So Adam, why don't you plug your stuff before we go tonight?
Yeah, I'm like totally sneaking in on your shit. Well, right now I'm live 10 hours a week and I love it. I have a great team behind me with my production, with CJ and Jim and Marcus and our producers club. And so I am live 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time, Monday through Friday, at AdamVersusTheMan.com, at least when I'm not banned on YouTube. I got banned for a week on YouTube for a video pointing out the implications and evidence of false positive COVID tests using 2 mainstream media news stories.
Adam, you can't talk about the coof.
I'm sorry, the Karen-virus. It's turned everybody into a fucking Karen. But yeah, you can find me online there. And this mug is, so we have some awesome merchandise at AdamVersusTheMan.com. But this is for my micronation that I'm starting here, the Garden of Freedom, or Gardenia, as we call it for short. Those of us who are residents here, we are Gardenians, obviously. And I am King Adam Charles Kokesh the First. His Grace. Hey, you will observe respectfully when in the presence of royalty. And this is a serious
Your Grace.
Thank you. Now, this is a serious micronations project in a lot of ways in terms of actually asserting our sovereignty when we declare our independence next year. But there are 3 examples of, if you don't know what micronations are, check out. There's a great Wikipedia page with a list of them. The ones that I really like, I won't tell everybody the stories, but from funny to serious, the Conch Republic, Molossia, and Sealand. We hope to incorporate elements of all of those and make this at once a lampooning of statism and authoritarianism, but also a serious assertion of my and my wife, our sovereignty here, in declaring this land independent of the United States as a sovereign nation. So you can follow us at the Garden of Freedom on Instagram. That's the best place. We have an amazing gallery there. We've got kittens that sometimes join me for interviews. I won a debate the other day online because I had the kittens, and it was like, and I have a kitten, therefore your point is invalid. But yeah, so check it out. Go find us on Instagram at the Garden of Freedom. And then AdamVersusTheMan.com is where our show is live. And me, social media, I'm active on Twitter. I'm actually really enjoying Twitter a lot lately. So I'm just at Adam Kokesh on Twitter. And let me close by saying, guys, I really appreciate what you do. I've been in independent media. Oh, you have a puppy. You win the debate. All right, you win the interview. You win the show tonight. You win. That's the way to do it. I could go show you 6 kittens and I would win, but I'm not willing to use the nuclear option for just this scenario yet.
There's 3 props you can use to win a debate: puppies, kittens, and babies. I only got babies. I got no puppies or kittens here. So and they're asleep, so I can't use them. So
anyway, the last thing I want to say is that for what you guys are doing here, we are competing for your attention with the mainstream media, and we're not going to be as well funded by definition probably ever. But when you have the truth on your side, you can still gather an audience of people who care about what you have to say. And for everybody at the Rhodes Foundation, Rhodes to Liberty, and for our hosts tonight and the media and the work that you guys do, I really want to encourage everybody in your audience. If you made it this far into this show, share it. Put your money where your eyes and your ears are. Support this program. Buy some merchandise. The technology is going to keep advancing humanity beyond our wildest dreams, but it means nothing without deliberate, conscientious use. And for independent media, that means having an active and engaged audience. So thank you not only to my hosts tonight, but everybody in your audience who makes your show possible as well.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you to everybody who tuned into this podcast to listen to us ramble for the last 70 minutes. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate it if you would to tune in tomorrow, Wednesday, September 30th, when we're going to break down the debate that just happened tonight. So tune in. Me and Hobbs and Ben, we're going to break down the debate, talk about all the fun ways in which two senile men yelled at each other for an hour and a half. It'll be a lot of fun. Hobbs, do you have a show coming up on Friday?
I don't have any guests lined up yet. I'll fire off a few emails and see if I can dig one up, and if not, I'm sure one of the Boogie Boys will definitely want to jump in on it. So yeah, tomorrow, am I going to need to get like some boxed wine and Xanax or something just to kind of
get as inebriated as humanly possible.
It's a work day, man.
I get time flies when you're on methamphetamines. That's why they give them to kids for ADHD.
All ladies have Adderall prescription.
We've been at it for 70 minutes, everybody. It's time to call it a night. Thank you, Adam, for coming on the show. And again, thank you, everybody, for listening in. The website for merchandise is roads2liberty.com. And remember to go on, if you want to find other episodes of this program, go to think-liberty.com. That's think-liberty.com. And you'll find all the episodes of the Think Liberty Network. All right, everybody, that's it for tonight. Peace out. Where it would be if my mouse would work and I could